All right, next I'm gonna go with some kind of dark metal. And maybe I'm gonna go with this one. Steel rust wear. All right, so I'm gonna put it over here at the bottom. Yeah, I feel like this works quite well. And so now if I select this substance material and go to properties, this is where you can see the true power of these parametric materials. So all of these parameters have been engineered in Substance Designer. And so these parameters are exposed for you to change and customize. And there are endless variations of the same material. And you can actually go and here in C, you can just randomize. So if I zoom in, change the light a little bit, and when I click random, I can get endless different variations. And then you can come in and you can start playing yourself. So let's say I want to increase surface imperfections. See this? Or dirt scale, how big are those dirt, patches? Rust intensity. And so forth. Let's keep it at a reasonable level for now, and then we'll see where it goes. Once again, this material is quite useful, so I'm probably gonna use it across texture sets. So let's see, where else? So I can definitely use it on the tires over here, and then this front piece over here as well. So if you want to select a texture set by clicking on the model, you can do so. If you hold Control Alt and right mouse button. So for instance, these tires, Control Alt, right mouse button, and you're gonna select the tires. So, okay, so first I need this material and I need to add it on this object over here. And this object is part of details texture set. So go here, create an instance, it's like none, and just edit on details like this, all right? Actually fits quite well, but I'm gonna create a white mask this time. Add some paint, and let's see. I definitely don't want this black metal to be here. So with the chunks, mesh fill selected, I'm gonna, subtract this from the mask, right? Well, I still have the bottom textures selected, so I need to go to details, and now I can go here, as before, create white mask, create paint, and I can simply deselect. By the way, adding or subtracting from the mask is controlled when you have the Polygon fill tool is controlled right over here. So as you can see, the color is at black, and this is why you're removing from the selection. If I go in the other direction, I'm actually adding to selection. You can also use shortcut X. So just gonna select from there. This is probably going to be some kind of rubber, the frame of the window. So we need it there. Wipers, also rubber of sorts. Okay. And let's see if we have some rubber, which we can use for the tires and window frames. So I'm just going to search here. And actually, we do not have anything. At this point, what I can do is I can browse 3 assets. All right. And so in order to do that, I can either go from the Creative Cloud right over here, 3D section, and if you are subscribed to Adobe Creative Cloud, well, Adobe Substance rather, you're going to be able to access the collection of all the materials in our database. So search for rubber, and let's see. So I'm going to use this one. So simply going to send this to Substance 3D Painter. And here it is. It just showed up here in my base materials. And don't worry, if you don't have an access, you can use a variety of similar materials to emulate rubber. So this time I'm going to drag this and drop it on the tires right over here. And let's see. I'd like to use rubber here for the window frames. So which texture set is that? That's details. So before I start adding masks, I'm gonna create an instance in the details texture set. All right, and now it's safe for me to start working on this thing. But I'm gonna put it in a different group. Tires, create black mask again, and the paint layer. Now I can just select the tires, just like this. Let's go to details. Here I can, I guess I can simply create a black mask again. Repeat the whole step and only select the window frames. And actually, I think I'm going to use the same material here. This piece over here. It's probably some kind of plastic, but I think it's very similar to something like rubber. So that means that I need an instance of the same substance material here in the body front texture set. So again, I'm going to go to tires. And again, let's go here. And I'm going to add this in body front. Like that. And of course, I don't need it across the whole thing. Just here. And I'll do the same thing for the rear part of the vehicle. Yeah, that looks good. Now let's add some kind of car paint. Let's see. Search for something like steel. And let's just use this base material, which comes with Substance Painter, I believe. So I'm going to drop this material here on this texture set. That's going to be our base, and then I'm going to add some paint on top of it. And actually, this is a smart material, which I have selected. So again, let me show you what smart materials are. So I'm quickly going to delete this thing. And in the assets, I'm going to go to Smart Material tab. And as explained before, smart materials are essentially groups which have multiple base materials and some smart masks applied on them. And so this essentially allows you to very quickly create a very sophisticated material. So let's see, let's use a couple of examples here, and you can see exactly what I'm talking about. For instance, let's use this red oily machine. It's actually something that I made for a robot asset. So if I use this one and drag it here, we're getting some pretty crazy result right off the bat. But actually what happened here in the layer stack, what I have essentially is a bunch of different base materials, and some of them have masks. Since we haven't covered the masks just yet, I'm not going to use it at this point. I'm going to use it for, I'm going to save this for a little bit later. So let's start with something which is not as complex as this. I just wanted to kind of show you how powerful smart materials really are. So going back to my base materials, I'll start with maybe this rough steel. Yeah, this looks good. Yeah. All right. And let's plan to use this one on the rear body as well. So I'm going to create an instance again. And just going to use it here. Not interior, but the rear part. Yeah, I think this is good for now. And by the way, using instances is so powerful because now, even though, you know, the original one is at the front part of the body, if I change anything, all the instances that we have on other texture sets are, you know, they're also going to change accordingly. So if I click on this guy and go to, let's say I want to change the color to maybe something like this, right? You can see that this instance, which has been applied on the rear part of the vehicle, also changed the color. I can change something like roughness. And then we said we're going to have some paint on top. So let's go back to something like a regular metal, something you would expect to, you know, to find under the, you know, the paint. And it seems like the surface is a little bit too big. It looks like a toy car almost. And so here in the UV transformation, I'm going to change the scale to a lower value, like maybe 2. And you see now the pattern is smaller, maybe even 3. Like this. Yeah, this looks pretty good. If you remember when I was explaining the environment map and how it affects the surface, different surfaces, now you can see exactly what I was referring to. You see how now the environment map is being reflected because this is almost like chrome material. So if we change it, let's just change it for a second. Change the, you know, this panorama to something, you know, completely different. Whatever it is. The look has completely changed, right? Especially on the metal surface. And this is why definitely pay attention. Pay attention of the what kind of environment you're using when you're creating your textures. Because let's say that from here you're going to go to, you know, Maya, where you have a completely different scene with different light setup. The materials might look way different from you know, from what you have been working on. All right. And at this point, I would like to maybe just explain some of the channels of the PBR material. So right now, what we have is the color. the metal, roughness, and normal map. Let's turn off all of them. Of course, since we have no active channels, we can't really see anything, right? Like it's almost as if we do not have this material. I'm going to turn on color, and the color here, it's defined by this parameter here, and this can be completely different. It all depends how it has been set in Substance Designer. But if I change the color to something like this, you can see the color, has actually changed. When we turn on roughness, now we can actually control the roughness as well, because we do have this parameter exposed. So I can make it really shiny, like this, or maybe we can make it rough, like a rough surface like this, right? So I can even play, like turn off the color and then change the roughness of the steel. See? But when I turn on metal, this is where things get interesting, because now we have changed the nature of the surface. And finally, I can turn on my normal map. And when I do so, you can see that now normal map is emulating these micro details on the surface. So this looks like almost as if you have a high resolution mesh and you have all of these high frequency details essentially baked into geometry. So that's the power of a normal map. Yeah, this looks great. So that's going to be our base metal, and on top of this, we're going to use some paint, and then we're going to expose some paint damages. So this is something we're going to continue in the next video. All right, so in this section, we are going to start adding some paint and then expose, the base metal which we have just created. But before we venture into doing that, let's first see where exactly this, base metal should be applied to. So I need to create a mask here. So I'm just going to group this, and I'm going to call it car paint, for instance, or just maybe base metal, something like that. Like mask. Again, so the reason I'm not adding a mask straight on top of this material is because this material, if you remember, is instanced to the rear part. So if I do create a mask, it's going to affect, whatever is happening in a different texture set. So I don't want that. And this is why I'm putting it into its own group. And now I can do whatever I like. So paint, and then let's start adding. Again, I can use my paintbrush, but I don't need it for this, because this is just rough, rough selection. We can add those fine details later if you want to do so. For now, I just need to add, whole chunks like this. Actually, maybe it can be, I can break it a little bit, and this rubber here. Yeah, I think this is good. Yeah, this looks good. Since we're here, I'm just gonna add this rubber material right over here. It would be some kind of plastic in real life, but it doesn't really matter. I think it looks good. Okay. Let's do the same here. Body rear. Now, since this is an instance, I am able to just add a black mask without affecting the original one, of course. And paint. Let's add those chunks in. Yeah. And now we are ready to add some paint. on top of this. So for that, let's just use a very basic material. So I'm just going to use this plastic, pretty much, and just going to drop it here. And since this plastic, which we can call maybe paint, should be applied to exactly the same meshes as the steel, I'm just going to drag it inside of this group over here, just like that. Perfect. And so my plan now is to add a mask and then expose some of this steel. All right. So first I'm going to add a black mask. And now let's see how smart masks work. So I'm going to go here in the assets, smart masks, and let's just use one of them. Let's see which one we would like to use. Maybe this damaged paint or stains surface. It gives you an idea like how this mask actually works. So let's use this one. So I'm going to add it here, and there you go. So now over here, you can see that we have several layers which have been created, added to the mask. And we can turn off all of them for a second. This paint probably doesn't do anything. And first I'm going to expose this mask builder. And if I click on the mask builder and go to properties, we have an access to a whole bunch of different properties, which is the way these mask builders work essentially, right? And by the way, if you want to add this yourself, it is actually a generator. So you would go here, click on the mask, right mouse button click, and you would add a generator. And from here, you can add something like, you know, the mask builder, just like we have right now. We don't need it here. So let's go with the one we have in here already. And so we can play with different things. If you remember the curvature map that I mentioned before, so if we go here, so I'll show you once again, curvature map, if you remember, which is a way for Substance Painter to determine where are the edges of your model. Well, this mask builder is actually using that information to kind of expose the edges. I'm going to click M to go back. And here, you see in the properties, curvature is all the way to 1. If you drop it to 0, all of a sudden, you know, the damages on the edges are gone. But now, of course, there are a lot of different parameters which we can play with. For instance, you can also add ambient occlusion. And then this ambient occlusion works alongside with maybe something like, I don't know, scratches. So we can drop down these scratches. We have top-down gradient. So you see maybe, you know, the mask is going to expose the upper part of your object. We can increase grunge like this. We can play with the overall level. We can play with contrast, so it might be smooth, like that. And here you can even play with custom grunge. So add something that you like. For instance, maybe let's try, and I'm just going to type in grunge. And these are all the textures which are actually included with Substance Painter, and they're all procedural. So do something like this. I don't really see it in here. Grunge, use second grunge, use custom grunge. Oh yeah, there you go. Yeah. So now since we have turned on use custom grunge over here, we actually can play with it. So it's right over here. So, you know, to play with balance, you know, maybe change something like contrast, or we can change it altogether. You know, use different things, which may or may not be what we want. And you can spend hours, obviously, just playing around and working with all of these, you know, parameters. It's just possibilities are endless. I'm going to settle with something maybe like this, but I'm not going to expose so much. So let's see, maybe increase the contrast and drop the balance. Maybe like this. All right. And so now I'm actually going to turn on the second generator, which is where actually this one is not even generator. This one is different type, which is fill. If you want to add fill, you can, same thing, right mouse button on the mask, and then you can add fill like this. And then you can actually add a texture which is going to be blended with whatever is underneath. And you can change the blending mode right over here. So that this is what has been done over here, essentially. I think some kind of grunge procedural texture is being used here. But the blending mode is set to multiply. So it's set to multiply. And it's just multiplying with whatever we have over here underneath. I think this mask is probably too intense as it is right now. So maybe we need to turn off the second grunge. Yeah, get something a bit, you know, less grungy. We have these nice edges here. And by the way, if there's a section which you don't like, because all of this is procedural and often the results are kind of random, you can always add a paint layer straight on top. Go to your paint, and maybe use something like dirt brush. I'm gonna turn off this guy, dirt brush, and I can essentially paint off whatever I don't need, or add. You can also add if you like. So you have best of both worlds. You can procedurally add your base, like I'm doing, and then you can fine tune whatever you don't like. Just simply paint, elements you like. So now you can see how we are exposing this metal underneath. Okay, and so now let's go back to the paint material and maybe drop down roughness, for instance. So make it shiny. So it's a shiny paint. Okay, and let me show you how the height map works. So right now, height map is turned off. We'll turn it on. And since it's at the 0 value of the slider, we can't really see anything. But if I go up you can see that we are essentially raising, you know, the material. We're adding thickness. And it's especially obvious, you know, in the all of the areas where the mask is exposing the underlying material. And so if this looks like it doesn't have enough detail, this is because we need to change the texture set resolution. If you remember, right now we're using, you know, the viewport resolution of the active texture set, which is set to 2K. So essentially, this is the UV map of this texture set, and this is 2K resolution, which we're seeing in real time. We can go up. So for instance, I can go to 4K, and it's going to look finer, but this is probably going to drop the overall performance. So for now, I'm just going to use 2K. And you can also go the other way around. So if we go back to the paint, go to properties, now it's raised, but it can go invert as well as so, which of course is not something we want to do. So I'm only going to use it a little bit. So like this, give it a little bit of thickness, just like that. Perfect. All right. And I'm actually going to just copy this object, this whole material, along with the mask. Control C, and go to second texture set, the rear part, and I'm gonna paste it over here, just like that. But if you remember, we had this paint. And actually what we need to do is we need to group these two, just like we did with the frontal part. And that's going to be the base metal. Well, actually, I think this is more of a car paint, right? So it's car paint. And I can copy this paint, delete it from here, add black mask here, and then paste this paint effect. And this needs to be, I don't even need a mask right now, remove mask. So essentially, everything that's underneath this group has been applied to only these areas of the object that I need. And since this texture set has different curvature maps, different ambient occlusion maps, the way this mask is going to work in, on this part is different than on the frontal piece, because it's going to use its own ambient occlusion, curvature, and other information maps. So everything that we did, all the work we did on the, creating this mask is now automatically applied on this different object, because this different object, where it's better to say this different texture set, has its own set of information maps. And so Painter is going to recalculate all the effects of the mask, which we're using here on the this object, except the paint. We don't need the paint. It's not going to do anything. And of course, we can fine tune it. So let's see. Maybe try to fine tune this. For instance, it looks too grungy. So try changing that. Change the level, contrast, all of those things. Or we can even randomize. yeah, we can randomize if we're not happy. It looks. Turn back on the grunge paint scratched, and there you go. This looks great.